What if I told you that scientists and archaeologists might have uncovered physical evidence of Sodom and Gomorrah's fiery demise? Cities wiped off the map by what seems to be a catastrophic event, so sudden and violent that it left behind a layer of ash and destruction. Now, let me ask you something even more startling. Have we been completely wrong about the real reason these cities were destroyed? For centuries, the story of Sodom and Gomorrah has been used to illustrate moral failure and divine judgment. But the deeper truth might surprise you. What if this ancient tale isn't just about personal wrongdoing, but also speaks to a society plagued by greed, injustice, and neglect? Are we, in our modern world, unknowingly echoing the same patterns? Stick around, because we're diving into the fascinating, misunderstood story of these ancient cities, and it just might change how you see history and yourself. The story of Sodom and Gomorrah is one of the most infamous accounts in the Bible. Found in the book of Genesis, this tale is a cornerstone of biblical teachings, standing as a dramatic testament to divine judgment and the consequences of human actions. These two cities were said to be destroyed by fire and brimstone, wiped off the face of the earth by an act of God Himself. But what is it about this story that continues to capture our imagination thousands of years later? The destruction of Sodom and Gomorrah is often cited as a warning against immorality, yet it is far more complex than a simple tale of wrongdoing. Religious texts describe their downfall as a response to rampant sin, but interpretations vary widely depending on whom you ask. Some say it's about personal vice. Others point to societal injustice and oppression. The story raises profound questions about justice, mercy, and the human condition. What sins were so grievous that an entire region had to be obliterated? Beyond its religious significance, the story has left an indelible mark on popular culture. It's been depicted in movies, books, and art, often painted as a tale of shocking destruction and moral decline. But is there more to this narrative than meets the eye? Could it also serve as a mirror for our modern world, a cautionary tale about the societal pitfalls that still plague humanity today? In this video, we'll unravel the layers of Sodom and Gomorrah, exploring its historical, cultural, and theological depths. Whether you view it as a literal event, a symbolic lesson, or a bit of both, this story holds powerful implications that resonate far beyond its ancient origins. Let's uncover the truth behind one of the Bible's most enigmatic tales. When most people think of Sodom and Gomorrah, a few immediate images come to mind: fiery destruction, divine wrath, and a culture consumed by sin. These cities have long been synonymous with immorality and punishment, used as cautionary tales across religious and secular settings. But what exactly went wrong in Sodom and Gomorrah, and why has this story become so misunderstood? The problem begins with how this story is often oversimplified. Many interpret the destruction of these cities as a blanket condemnation of personal immorality, particularly focusing on specific sins. However, a closer reading of the biblical text reveals that the issues at play were far more complex and multifaceted. Sodom and Gomorrah weren't just about individual failings, they represented societal decay on a grand scale. Issues like unchecked pride, inhospitality, and widespread injustice are mentioned in various interpretations, but these layers are often overlooked in favor of sensationalized accounts. This oversimplification creates challenges for modern people. Many focus on the sins of the flesh, interpreting the story as solely about sexual immorality, but fail to recognize the broader implications about societal corruption and neglect of the vulnerable. Prophets like Ezekiel later clarified that Sodom's sins included arrogance, greed, and failing to care for the poor and needy. Ezekiel 16:49. This shift in perspective drastically changes the narrative. pointing to a deeper message about communal responsibility and the consequences of societal decay. Another challenge is the cultural and historical distance between us and the events described. Sodom and Gomorrah existed in a world vastly different from ours, where ancient Near Eastern practices and norms shaped daily life. Understanding the historical context of the cities' destruction requires looking beyond a surface-level reading of the text. What were these cities like before their downfall? How did their practices and policies reflect their moral state? Without this context, it's easy to misinterpret or even misuse the story to support modern agendas that may miss the heart of the message. Additionally, the method of their destruction, fire and brimstone raining from the heavens, has led to countless debates. Was it a literal act of divine intervention, or does it symbolize something more metaphorical? Some scholars propose that geological events, such as a volcanic eruption or a meteor strike, could explain the destruction. Others believe the story is a theological parable meant to warn against moral and spiritual decay. These differing interpretations make it even harder to arrive at a clear consensus about the story's meaning. Finally, the challenge lies in how this narrative is weaponized in contemporary discourse. Some use Sodom and Gomorrah as a tool for condemnation, targeting specific groups or behaviors without acknowledging the broader themes of justice, compassion, and humility. This misuse of the story further alienates people from its true lessons and creates division rather than understanding. The story of Sodom and Gomorrah is far more than a tale of fire and brimstone. It's a reflection of human society at its worst. To truly grasp its meaning, we must challenge preconceived notions and dig deeper into the text, the culture, and the lessons it offers for today's world. To truly understand the story of Sodom and Gomorrah, it is crucial to explore the historical, cultural, and spiritual context in which these cities existed. Their names have become synonymous with sin and destruction, but beneath the surface lies a narrative rich with lessons about human behavior, societal values, and divine justice. Sodom and Gomorrah were part of a region referred to in the Bible as the cities of the plain, likely located near the Dead Sea. The geographical details in Genesis describe the area as fertile and prosperous, like the garden of the Lord, Genesis 13:10. This lush setting suggests that these cities were once thriving centers of commerce and agriculture, full of opportunity and abundance. Yet, prosperity often comes with its own pitfalls. In Sodom and Gomorrah, wealth and success seem to foster arrogance, greed, and moral decay, rather than gratitude or responsibility. The Bible portrays the citizens of these cities as guilty of grievous sins. But what exactly were these offenses? Common interpretations emphasize sexual immorality, particularly in Genesis 19, where the men of Sodom demand to abuse Lot's angelic visitors. However, reducing the story to this single event neglects the broader societal issues. Other parts of Scripture, such as Ezekiel 16:49 through 50, expand on the sins of Sodom, pointing to pride, gluttony, complacency, and a failure to care for the poor and needy. These cities embodied a culture of selfishness and injustice, where the vulnerable were exploited or ignored, and where hospitality, a sacred duty in the ancient Near East, was flagrantly disregarded. Hospitality in ancient times was not just a matter of politeness, it was a moral and spiritual obligation. Travelers, strangers, and the needy relied on the generosity of others for survival in a harsh environment. The violent and inhumane behavior of Sodom's citizens toward Lot's guests symbolized a deeper corruption of societal values. By rejecting and threatening those who came under their protection, the people of Sodom displayed a level of moral depravity that went beyond personal failings. It was a communal betrayal of divine principles. Archaeological and historical insights add another layer to the story. Some scholars suggest that Sodom and Gomorrah were real cities that met a catastrophic end, possibly due to natural disasters like an earthquake or a meteor strike. These events could explain the fire and brimstone imagery in the Bible. Others view the narrative as a theological parable, emphasizing moral and spiritual truths over historical accuracy. Both perspectives highlight the timelessness of the story's warnings about societal corruption and divine accountability. The role of Abraham in the narrative further deepens the story's exploration of justice and mercy. In Genesis 18, Abraham pleads with God to spare the cities if even a handful of righteous people can be found within them. This negotiation reveals God's character as both just and compassionate, willing to extend mercy if even a small remnant remains faithful. However, the absence of such righteousness in Sodom and Gomorrah underscores their complete moral collapse. The story challenges modern people to reflect on their own communities and values. Are we fostering justice, compassion, and humility, or are we falling into the same patterns of arrogance, neglect, and exploitation? By examining the historical and spiritual dimensions of Sodom and Gomorrah, we uncover lessons that resonate across time, urging us to strive for societies rooted in righteousness and love. The story of Sodom and Gomorrah reaches its dramatic and unforgettable climax when divine judgment is executed upon these cities. This pivotal moment is not only the most intense part of the narrative, but also one that radically shifts our understanding of the events leading to their destruction and what they symbolize. As the sun rises over the city of Sodom, the angelic visitors, who came under Lot's protection the night before, urgently instruct Lot and his family to flee. The angels warn them not to look back as they escape, emphasizing the irreversible nature of the coming judgment. This is a key moment of tension. Lot and his family are caught between the impending wrath of God and the comforts of the city they called home. The urgency of the angel's warning reflects the immediacy of divine action, but it also raises profound questions. Why did the judgment have to be so absolute? The Bible describes the destruction vividly. Then the Lord rained down burning sulfur on Sodom and Gomorrah from the Lord out of the heavens. Thus he overthrew those cities and the entire plain, destroying all those living in the cities, and also the vegetation in the land. Genesis 19:24-25. This catastrophic imagery has often been interpreted as divine retribution, but its deeper meaning lies in what it reveals about the nature of God and humanity. First, the destruction of Sodom and Gomorrah serves as a divine response to unchecked wickedness. Throughout the Bible, God's judgment is portrayed as not only punitive but also corrective, meant to serve as a warning to others. The fire and brimstone that rained down upon these cities were a dramatic display of God's intolerance for injustice, corruption, and inhumanity. But it's also important to note the absence of even a small remnant of righteousness in these cities. Abraham's earlier negotiation with God to spare the cities for the sake of 10 righteous people highlights God's willingness to extend mercy. The fact that no such righteous individuals could be found demonstrates the total moral decay of the society. The climax also centers on Lot's wife, whose tragic decision to look back as the cities are destroyed has become one of the most haunting moments in the narrative. Her transformation into a pillar of salt is often seen as a symbol of disobedience, attachment to sin, or an inability to let go of the past. It reminds people that divine instructions, no matter how difficult to comprehend, carry profound significance. Her fate serves as a cautionary tale about the dangers of lingering in places or mindsets that God calls us to leave behind. For Lot and his daughters, the escape is both a physical and spiritual journey. Their survival signifies a moment of divine grace, but it also leaves them with the weight of witnessing such a devastating event. This duality reflects the broader message of the story. God's justice is absolute, but His mercy is extended to those who heed His call. This climactic moment forces people to confront uncomfortable truths about humanity's potential for evil and the consequences of collective sin. It also challenges us to reflect on our own lives. Do we, like Lot's wife, find ourselves tempted to look back, clinging to what God has called us to leave behind? Or can we move forward in faith, trusting in God's plan and His call to righteousness? Ultimately, the destruction of Sodom and Gomorrah is more than a moment of divine wrath. It's a turning point that underscores the need for justice, accountability, and an unwavering commitment to live according to God's principles. It stands as a timeless reminder of the dangers of moral complacency and the transformative power of obedience to God's will. The story of Sodom and Gomorrah is one of the Bible's most profound and sobering accounts, carrying lessons that resonate far beyond its ancient context. At its core, the narrative is a powerful reminder of the consequences of unchecked wickedness and the importance of living a life aligned with God's principles. It's not just a tale of judgment, it's a call to self-reflection, accountability, and transformation. We began by uncovering the common misconceptions surrounding these infamous cities. Were they destroyed solely because of specific sins, or is the lesson more nuanced, highlighting a culture of pervasive injustice and inhumanity? The story challenges us to dig deeper into the reasons behind God's actions and consider how the absence of righteousness shaped their fate. In the climactic moments, we witness the harrowing destruction, the urgency of divine warnings, and the tragic loss of Lot's wife. These events are themes of obedience, grace, and the consequences of clinging to a sinful past. Sodom and Gomorrah's tale isn't just about the past, it's a mirror for our own times. Are we living in ways that honor God's call for justice, kindness, and humility? This narrative invites us to choose righteousness over complacency, transformation over destruction. What do you think about the story of Sodom and Gomorrah? Does it challenge the way you see justice and mercy? Share your thoughts in the comments below. We would love to hear your perspective. There's so much more to explore. Don't forget to like, share, and subscribe for more in-depth Bible stories.